Tonight's story is one of those conversations that sits directly at the intersection of family, identity, and the complicated price of breaking away from immense wealth. And before we go any further, if you enjoy calm, thoughtful breakdowns of trending celebrity stories, go ahead and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now let's get into it. There's a particular silence that surrounds the children of powerful men. A hush, a space where people assume privilege erases all conflict, where money is supposed to guarantee ease, comfort, and a life without regret. But as we've seen time and time again, life doesn't always align with the assumptions of the public. And right now, the story unfolding around Vivian Jenna Wilson, the transgender daughter of Elon Musk, is pulling back the curtain on something deeper, the fragile reality of what happens when you cut ties with a billionaire parent, believing it will bring freedom, only to discover that freedom can come with a weight you never fully imagined. Vivian Wilson's journey has always lived in the shadow of her father's legacy. Elon Musk is, after all, one of the most polarizing figures on the planet, a man whose name sparks headlines effortlessly. But Vivian? She's been quieter, distant, almost ghost-like in the media cycle until recently. And what she's beginning to reveal is causing fans across the internet to pause, to raise eyebrows, and to whisper among themselves that maybe, just maybe, there's more to this family saga than anyone originally understood. So here's the heart of the current storm. Vivian Wilson has admitted, subtly but unmistakably, that she regrets the harshness of the break with her father. And more boldly, she regrets walking away from the money. In her own words, "I probably should have taken it." That one sentence cracked open an entire conversation online. A conversation about pride, independence, identity, and the uncomfortable truth that even ideological decisions carry financial consequences. And in today's commentary, we're breaking down exactly what led to this moment, why fans are shocked, what insiders are saying, and what this revelation really means for the Musk family dynamic. Because this isn't just another celebrity headline. It's a story about a child who wanted to stand apart from her father, only to realize the distance came with a cost she wasn't ready for. To understand Vivian's regret, we need to rewind. Not to the sensational headlines or the internet drama, but to the quiet background of a family that has been complicated from the very beginning. Vivian Wilson, born Xavier Musk, grew up in an environment shaped by wealth beyond comprehension. Private schools, access to resources, and upbringing surrounded by privilege, the kind most people can only imagine. But at the heart of that life was a complicated father-child dynamic. Elon, with his empire spread across Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and X, formerly Twitter, was often emotionally and physically distant. Not unusual for a man running multiple companies at once, but for a child, it can create wounds that money alone cannot fill. Over time, those wounds deepened. And in 2022, when Vivian filed documents to legally change both her name and gender and declared she no longer wished to be associated with Elon Musk in any way, shape, or form, the public saw it as a definitive break. A final line drawn in permanent ink. What the public didn't see was the emotional turmoil behind it, the pressure, the expectations, the weight of being the child of the world's richest man. Vivian wanted independence. She wanted identity. And she wanted distance from a father whose public persona clashed with her personal beliefs. And so she walked away from the name, from the legacy, and from the financial support that came with it. At the time, it seemed brave, almost inspirational. But life, as it always does, unfolded differently than the idealistic version imagined. When Vivian first cut ties, she received praise from people who saw her decision as bold and empowering. But empowerment can be emotionally fulfilling while being financially devastating. And that's something fans are only now realizing. Sources close to the situation, friends, old schoolmates, even online commentators who followed her journey, say the reality after the break was far tougher than anyone expected. The sudden shift from immense privilege to complete independence forced her into a world she had never truly navigated before. Rent, bills, job applications, and the quiet but painful feeling of being on your own. For most people, these things are normal, even expected. For Vivian, They were brand new challenges that arrived all at once. And while she wasn't destitute, she wasn't insulated either. She had walked away from generational wealth, from the kind of financial security that can carry you through an entire lifetime without fear or stress. And as time passed, she began to feel the full weight of that choice. This is where regret began to take root. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly, creeping in between the lines of her everyday life. The phrase that sparked the internet, "I should have taken the money," didn't come from a press conference, a podcast, or a dramatic interview. It came from a personal conversation shared by someone who knew her. A moment of honesty. A moment of vulnerability. A moment where the emotional weight of her independence collided with the financial reality of her life. And it makes sense. Cutting ties with Elon Musk isn't like cutting ties with any other parent. It's not just walking away from a person, it's walking away from an empire. From resources that most people can barely comprehend. From comfort most people will never experience. Vivian had been raised with access to a certain level of privilege, and stepping away from that world entirely was harsher than she expected. Insiders say she's not necessarily seeking reconciliation. She's not asking for forgiveness. She's not even trying to return to the Musk family circle. But she is acknowledging something that many people are too ashamed to say aloud. Sometimes independence costs more than you think. And sometimes you look back and realize that pride can be expensive. When the news surfaced, fans across the internet lit up with reactions. Some expressed sympathy, saying it's common for young adults, especially those breaking away from complicated families, to underestimate the cost of independence. Others weren't so gentle. Comments flooded in saying, "What did you expect? Billionaire money isn't something you walk away from easily." She wanted freedom, but didn't realize freedom has bills. This is what happens when emotion drives decisions. But among all the commentary, the overwhelming tone was one of curiosity. People wanted to understand what really led her to this moment. What changed? What broke down? What did she expect? And what reality hit her the hardest? Fans were shocked, yes. But more than that, they were intrigued. Because in a world where celebrity children often coast effortlessly on their parents' wealth, Vivian's story stands out. It's rare. It's raw. It's complicated. And it exposes the uncomfortable truth that personal choices can collide with financial reality in ways you don't fully understand until it's too late. This isn't just a celebrity headline. It's a story about identity, legacy, generational pressure, and the emotional aftermath of walking away from one of the most powerful families in the world. Vivian Wilson's regret, whether temporary or lasting, shines a light on a rarely discussed reality. Even when you leave a toxic environment, there are parts of it you may secretly wish you had kept. Not the relationship, not the emotional dynamics, but the stability, the security, the safety net. People often frame independence as freedom. And it is, but freedom isn't free. Freedom comes with responsibility, with fear, with uncertainty, with bills, deadlines, and unexpected struggles that don't care about politics, identity, or personal beliefs. And in Vivian's case, freedom came with one more unexpected companion: regret. Not regret about who she is. That part of her story remains solid. But regret about the decision to walk away from resources that could have made her life easier, smoother, less painful. And that's what makes this story resonate. That's what makes fans pause and reflect. Because we've all been there in some way, making a choice we believed in at the time, only to look back and wonder if we could have handled it differently. Vivian is simply living a very public version of a very human experience. As we move deeper into this story, it's important to understand that things between Vivian and Elon weren't tense because of money. The tension was emotional, ideological, and deeply personal. Sources close to the family describe a growing distance that began long before the legal name change. Conversations that felt strained. Beliefs that clashed. A child searching for identity, and a father too busy or too distant to understand the depth of that struggle. Elon Musk's public comments about gender issues only amplified the divide. His political shifts, his bold statements, his active engagement on social media, All of it created a world where Vivian felt fundamentally unsupported. Walking away, in her eyes, wasn't about rejecting wealth. It was about rejecting a relationship that made her feel invisible. And that's the nuance many fans miss. She didn't leave because she didn't value the money. She left because she didn't feel recognized as a person. But even the most justified emotional decision can lead to unintended consequences. And that's where regret grows. Those close to Vivian say she's been trying to rebuild her life quietly, that she avoids media, that she doesn't want to be pulled back into the drama of the Musk family. But behind that silence, there are struggles she faces daily. Little things that most people forget matter. Paying for education without family funding, working while studying, finding stable housing, managing bills alone, feeling isolated from siblings still connected to the Musk family. These aren't scandals. They're normal life challenges, but for someone raised in extraordinary luxury, they're jarring. And this is where her regret takes shape. Not because she wants a billionaire lifestyle, not because she's begging for a reconciliation, but because she realizes that independence, while emotionally freeing, is financially unforgiving. That's the emotional thread that carries us toward the heart of the story. The realization that sometimes freedom comes at a higher cost than expected. One of the most fascinating layers of this situation is the gap between Elon Musk, the public figure, and Elon Musk, the father. Public Elon is confident, loud, witty, controversial, the king of online engagement. But private Elon is reportedly much harder to read. Some insiders describe him as distant but not cruel. Others say he compartmentalizes family the same way he does business, efficiently but not emotionally. And for a child seeking warmth and understanding, that can feel like rejection. It's no surprise, then, that Vivian felt she had to break away to build her own identity. But as time passed, she began to see that emotional boundaries and financial boundaries don't always have to be the same thing. That's the core of her regret. She doesn't regret becoming who she is. She regrets cutting off every form of support in the process, especially when life outside of wealth turned out to be far more challenging than she imagined. Most people fantasize about walking away from toxic family members, but they rarely consider the financial safety nets they would lose. Vivian made a choice she believed was necessary but not fully calculated. Insiders say she never imagined how heavy the reality of financial independence could be. She didn't expect the emotional weight of watching siblings live comfortably. She didn't expect the bitterness of knowing she gave up a safety net that could have protected her during difficult moments. And she certainly didn't expect to look back and say, maybe I should have taken the money, but that's where we are. Not in a dramatic meltdown, not in an emotional collapse, but in a quiet, honest admission that sometimes we don't fully understand the consequences of our choices until they show up in our life's months, or even years later. Vivian's regret doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean she's calling Elon. It doesn't mean she wants to rejoin the Musk family legacy. What it does mean is that she's human, a young adult navigating life with more pressure than most people can imagine. And acknowledging regret is a sign of growth, not weakness. It means she's reflecting. It means she's learning. It means she's honest enough to admit the emotional complexity of her decisions. That brings us to the end of today's commentary. If you enjoyed it and you want more thoughtful commentary, please subscribe to support the channel.